Well, hello guys! Another month has passed and we're here to discuss what I read in October. Alright guys, so here's the thing. One thing I wanted to mention before we get into this is I've seen a lot of talk on Twitter amongst booktubers and booktube watchers that there are not enough library hauls on booktube. And my piece on that is that I use the library a whole hell of a lot. But I don't do library haul videos. I've done one. The problem is that when I check things out of the library, they're usually things I put on hold. So I go get them as they come in, and then they're all due at different times, and I pick them up willy-nilly, and to have them all in one place at one time to make a nice succinct video of like my October library haul or my September library haul, I just can't do it. So I read a lot of library books. A lot will be featured in this video. I think that because you can't actively search library hauls, there's this impression that booktubers never use the library. And sure, a lot of us like to own the books that we love. We like to buy books and have them. That doesn't mean that we don't all use the library. Just wanted to say that. You'll see tons of them ahead. That said, let's get into what we read this month. I read 1 novella, 3 graphic novels, and a whopping 10 novels. To be fair, 3 of those were middle grade and the other 7 were full-length novels. You don't discredit it as a novel though. I read 10 novels. Pretty stoked. I either went like hardcore tomes or smaller middle grade, so let's see how we fared, shall we? As you know, I like to do my wrap-ups like this. I will go novellas first, graphic novels, then novels. I go from least favorite to most favorite, so that way you can skip ahead if you don't care about graphic novels, or you care more about the novels, or if you just want to see what I really liked or really did not like. That's on you. Let's start with a novella. I read Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It was free if you had Prime from Amazon. Thanks to Chelsea Dolling and Chelsea Dolling Reads for letting everyone know, because I got that book real fast. I took a bath. I read it from start to finish. I gave it 4 stars. It's a short novella about, it's like a pen pal type deal. A woman finds evidence that her husband's been cheating on her. She reaches out to the other woman's husband and they start exchanging letters, and through them you kind of see their growth and what happens in the end. I really liked it. The ending was super cool. I appreciate stories told in letters. I think it's one of my favorite exercises to do as a writer, though I don't think I would ever write a story like that. It was very character driven and I'm a sucker for characters. This is not new. That said, it wasn't the most inventive thing I've ever read, and it was fun. There's nothing really much more to say about a novella. You don't have a whole lot of time to get used to it. So 4 stars, and that's it. Next, we're moving on to graphic novels slash mangas, because I did read 1 manga this month and that comes in at 3 stars, and that is That Blue Sky Feeling. I was lucky enough to win a giveaway from Natalie over at Pages and Panels. I will link Natalie down below. She's a sweetheart. If you have any interest whatsoever in graphic novels and manga and you aren't subscribed to her, you should head over there right now, because not only has she started a new series where she is doing the research and finding out what is coming out in the following month. Like, she just released what's out in November, I think, and I watched it the other night and I'm interested in at least half of them. Great content. Unique because you don't see a whole lot of novels in her page. It's mostly just graphic novels and manga. You all know, if you're here, that I love that genre, so I want to give away. This was one half of the giveaway. The other was Zodiac Star Force, which I just read yesterday, so you'll hear about that next month. That Blue Sky Feeling, now that we're back on track, is about a guy named Noshiro. He's at school and he's really interested in this other guy, Sanada. The rumors is that Sanada is gay, so he's kind of ostracized by the school, and Noshiro is very intrigued by him, just in general. The story is about their relationship, because Noshiro approaches him, he tries to get him involved, they eventually become friends. I really appreciated what the story was doing for sexuality, because Noshiro is kind of uncertain about where he stands. He's never had a girlfriend, but he does find girls attractive, but like, he's not sure. So I love the explanation of it, the exploration of it. I love that Sonata finally is like, yeah, you know, I'm gay, but I don't like people to know about it. I like where the story's going. I want to keep reading it. My qualms with it were that Nishiro was kind of irritating and clingy. He didn't give people a personal space, and there's a point in which he goes behind Sonata's back to someone from his past and gets information from him, and I was like uncomfortable with that. And on the flip side of the coin, Sonata was kind of a dick to him a lot of the time. Their dynamic because of that was lackluster. I didn't really love it. I also don't hate it, and I would like to continue. So, 3 stars. The next 2 graphic novels are 4 stars for me. They were both very different and picked up on a whim. So the first one is H.P. Lovecraft, He Who Wrote in the Darkness. I picked this up solely because I saw it at the library. I've said it before a million times, my husband is a huge fan of H.P. Lovecraft. I don't know how much of my shelf you can see over here. We've got a lot of H.P. Lovecraft. I try and read a little bit by proxy, though I'm not a huge fan specifically of his work. It worked out in the end for this book because this graphic novel is not only beautifully bound, because it's got that nice mat that shows every fingerprint ever in the world, but the panels are really, really well placed. I really enjoyed the art. I didn't know what it was about going into it. I just thought it was going to pull from his work, but instead it was more of a snapshot of his life. We got to learn about Lovecraft. I looked up information on Wikipedia as it was happening. Like, we find out he was friends with Harry Houdini. They kind of did a project together, and ultimately it led to Houdini's death, more or less, and I was like, that can't be true. It's gotta be fiction. And I looked it up and no, it's not. That stuff happened. You can look it up on Wikipedia. I found that very fascinating. Lovecraft was kind of a weird asshole recluse, and I think that they did him justice in this. I enjoyed it. It was a very short read. Well done. 4 stars. My favorite graphic novel of the month was The Woods by James Tynion. I haven't got my hands on the second volume yet. This is just the first volume called The Arrows, I believe. The Arrow, singular. This is about a school that gets warped to another dimension, theoretically. I don't think they ever fully figured out where they were. And this dimension is full of monsters that murder people and eat them. And people get eaten and murdered. And it's a group that you see here has decided that they don't like what's happening inside the building, because you get your hierarchy, the people that want to be in power and the people that actually are in power, and that whole dichotomy. And these people are like, you know what? We have to follow this weird rock pointing us that way. And so they do. And they deal with some shit in the forest, and people deal with some shit in the school. I enjoyed it a lot. The art style was alright. It reminded me a little bit of, you guys know I love Sweet Tooth by Jeff Lemire. Reminded me a little bit of that. And actually, funnily enough, Jeff Lemire blurbed it on the front. So I figured I'd like it going in, and I did. It was a solid 4 star. Now we've moved on to the novel part of the wrap up here. I read 10 novels, 1 3 star, 4 4 stars, and 5 5 stars. I don't know how my fingers worked out. They may be correct on camera. I'll find out in editing. So let's begin with our 3 star. It was a disappointment to me because it was all over BookTube when it first launched. Some people that I really respect and align with their interests and their book reviews really loved it. I thought it was meh. That book is Sadie by Courtney Summers. I think I did a disservice to myself by not listening to the audiobook, because a lot of the people that love this book loved the audiobook. You guys know I'm not a big audiobook person unless I've already read the novel before, so I went with the straight up novel. And this is where the disservice happens, because the story is told in 2 parts. One is a podcast, so it's written thus like a podcast. It's quick, it's fast paced, you got multiple perspectives, it's very interesting, the information is coming at you, and it's broken up by chapters of Sadie, who is on a mission to find the man that murdered her little sister. The Sadie chapters dragged. They move slowly. She is not the most likable character, and I don't think it's a fault of her own. She's a teenager, so the choices she makes are typically dumb. She gets herself into a world of not good, and I slogged through this. I almost DNF'd it, but I kept going because it's short. Everyone loved it. AJ Finn blurbed it on the back, like Stephanie Perkins, Veronica Roth. I mean, people loved this book, and BookTube loves this book. I, however, did not love it. 3 stars. My first 4-star was edging on a 3.5-star the whole read, maybe even lower at a 3-star. And if you watch my vlogs, a lot of people were shocked that I gave it a 4-star in the end because of how much I complained about it in my daily vlogs. And that is Into the Drowning Deep by Myra Graham. The beginning of this book was so full of information. This is one of the tomes I talked about. It's like, it's not a tome, but it's pretty big, 430 something pages. The text is small and the pages are full, and they're full of scientific biology, marine biology, information. It's just information. What everyone does, why they're on this ship. Here's the synopsis. A ship goes out to sea. All of the people disappear. 6 weeks later, or sometime like that, the ship is found and no one's on it, and they don't know what happened to them. So now there's this new ship that's going out years later, like 7 years or something like that. And they go out to try and find it, and they think that it's mermaids that have somehow killed all of these people because this production company is the reason this ship has gone out in the first place. So people think that it's been faked, but it's not fake. There are legit killer mermaids out there. And this book gets to like 60% before things start happening with the mermaids on the second ship, which is what you're seeing. So the whole first half of the book is basically the lead up to the trip. Once the trip starts, it gets interesting. Once things start happening, the science interwoven into the action, totally fine. I'm not anti-science. I'm actually very pro-science, but I don't need every like nook and cranny of everything until you have action to back it up. I love Shauna Maguire. For those of you who don't know, Shauna Maguire and Myra Grant are the same person. I love her writing. The writing was good, and that's why I rounded up in the end to a 4, because I round up if the writing was well done. She's a great writer. I suffered from boredom, and then it got better, and so I give it a 4-star because action to the end, ace. Everything before that, the first 60 or so % was work. I don't like to read for work. I'm not getting paid to read for work. My next 4-star read is a middle grade. It is one with whom the writer is one of my favorites. That was incorrect grammatically speaking, but we're gonna leave it. The book was just okay. I liked it enough to give it a 4-star. I also have to keep in mind that middle grade is obviously well below my age range, and thus what I think of it is different than what an intended audience is going to think of it. And also I pit it against the work that I have already read that is for older audiences, and that is Small Spaces by Catherine Arden. I didn't hate it. I followed a middle grade that I liked more, and I think that made this suffer a little bit. For a book this small, it should have taken me a day, maybe 2 days to read. I think this took me 4 because I just wasn't interested at first, and then when it got into the story, it got a little better. It was a slower paced read, and then the climax was a small amount of time. If I can liken it to another middle grade that does that, it's J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, where action happens within like 2 pages and you're like, why didn't you flesh that out a little bit more? Because it would have been better. That's kind of what I ended up feeling with this. I like it. Like if I bought it, I wouldn't be mad about it. It could have been stronger, especially because, as I said, there were middle grade books that I read this month that did it better for me. But if I was like 10, 11, 12, this would probably be pretty perfect and up my alley. So I gave it a 4-star. I think that was a good middle ground. All right, let's carry on. The next 4-star read. The third and final. A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. I'm so glad I read this series. I'm so glad that Spence decided to do a read-along that stretched over 3 months and it could slowly plug away at this story. The size was incredibly intimidating, especially because I started the month off with this, and we're coming in at like 600 and some pages. 624 is what it ends on. I just wanted to get it over with halfway through, not because it was bad, but because it was big. What I loved about it is that Holland has become my new favorite villain. I say villain in quotes because anyone who reads V.E. Schwab's work knows that her characters are kind of gray. Villain, not villain, you decide. I loved this book because you got background on Holland. A lot of background on Holland. Yes, it progressed through everyone else's storyline, Lila Bard and Kel, Rye, and everybody. What made this book a solid 4-star for me was that you got to see more of the person that had been the evil, the bad, all of that. beforehand. I am not going to say anything more because it is the third in a trilogy, and to do so would ruin a lot of the plot, but the entire series for me got 4 stars from start to finish. It was a very solid series. Not my favorite, but it's up there in really good reads. Glad I did it. V.E. Schwab is now established as one of my favorite writers. If you've been thinking about checking it out, get it. Give it a shot. Check it out from your library. See what you think. I really loved it. And my final 4-star read is Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. I read it on ebook. It was a book that I put on hold a while ago, and then it came in, and it came in at like just the right time at the end of Halloween, and I fitted into my Boo-a-thon TBR. It started really slow. I wasn't invested in it. I got the notification saying that it was available, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll download it and get to it when I get to it. I also had the impression that being a middle grade, it would be like shorter and fast paced, but it wasn't. It was like full and rich and really well done, and because I wasn't prepared for a longer commitment, I read it slowly in the beginning. It grew, and then somewhere close to the halfway point, I was invested. I wanted to know. I think I read like 40% of it in one day. I adore it. I can't wait to see what happens next. I want to own the book. I eventually will. It's on my wish list for Christmas. I want the next book. It's about a girl that believes that she's a cursed child in the world that she's grown up in. Her parents treat her as such. Her life has sucked. She's found out that on a specific day, a turn of the year, basically, she's gonna die. On that day, she's rescued more or less by someone that takes her to a different world, one she didn't know of. So she cheats death, theoretically, and then her life changes, and the whole time she's like, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm a cursed person. Like, they're gonna figure it out. They're gonna figure out I'm a fraud and I'm cursed and I'm not supposed to be alive right now. I am in love with Morrigan Crow. Like, the whole character, you've seen it on BookTube. I'm gushing a little bit because everyone says it reminds me of Harry Potter, and people will probably tell you that, here's my opinion on whether it reminds me of Harry Potter. Is it like a wizard book? No. Is it exactly like Harry Potter? No. But it's the first time since Harry Potter that I've picked up a book and immersed myself in a world that isn't something I've seen before, and I got that same feeling in my heart. I got that same feeling of whimsy, how I drug that word out, of whimsy and wonder and fun, and I think that it's gonna go far. If you can keep on the same track, if Jessica Townsend can keep on the same track she's going, this is gonna be a really, really good story that will, I think, span time and decades, and people will still be talking about it a decade or two from now and further. 4 stars, only because that first half for me was very slow, but I think that's on me. I might raise it to like a 4.5 if, you know, Goodreads had half stars, because I didn't know what I was getting into and I wasn't prepared for it. So yeah, I think in the end, we're going 4.5 stars. So the first book that I'm going to talk about in the 5-star category technically doesn't belong at the bottom of the 5 stars, but it's a reread, so I want to, in the future, if I do a reread, put it first in its category, simply because it's not fair to hold an old favorite up to new favorites. So I reread The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. I listened to it on audiobook, which is actually really amazing. The audiobook is read by a woman who clearly speaks Russian and had all of the mannerisms and the speech patterns down, and it was really incredible to listen to, especially because a lot of the things were said differently in my head. If you know me, I mispronounce so many things. I didn't learn phonics. Sue me. In any case, I do my best. It was great to listen to. I listened to it over the course of like 2 weeks maybe, just bit by bit when I had a chance, just as a refresher, because I wanted to pick up Girl in the Tower at the beginning of this month, which I have. I always get very nervous when I go into a reread of a book that has been a favorite of mine, because I'm like, what if I don't like it this time? What if I was influenced by someone else's opinion? What if I was just in the mood for it at that time and it's no longer a favorite? Still a favorite, still a top 5 book for me. If you like fantasy at all, if you like folklore, especially Russian folklore, which is really what this is about, which would never, I think, tickle my fancy, but I picked it up because a friend of mine, Kath, who has a blog, she's also an Instagrammer, so, or a bookstagrammer, I'll link her down below because I think I've brought her up before and just never credited her for what she's done for me in my reading. But that's how I found Bear and the Nightingale. If any of that sounds interesting to you, I'm rambling because it's a favorite, please check it out. It's a beautiful book. It's well written, beautifully written, so much fun. So my official first 5-star of the month is City of Ghosts by V.E. Schwab. I read this middle grade first, and I believe it's technically like my first middle grade in a very long time. Like Harry Potter time. I didn't know what to think going in. I also didn't want to buy it because I don't know how I feel about middle grade. It's hit or miss for me, but this was fast-paced, it was fun. It's about a girl who has a near-death experience, and from that point forward she can cross the veil and see dead people. She can see ghosts. Her parents have a career in this, and they get hired to do a TV show because her mom is very into ghosts and lore like that, and her dad is kind of the science guy that tries to disprove it with science and logic. They get hired to move to Edinburgh and film this show, and she comes with them obviously, and her best friend is a ghost, and it's like the shenanigans they get into. It's going to be a series. This is the first in the series. I'm in. 5-star read. Sign me up, V.E. Schwab. My next 5-star read is one that was on my end of year TBR, so I have completed it. Yay for me. It was in my boo-a-thon, so I won't spend too much time on it, but that is Mr. Mercedes by Stephen King. I prefer Stephen King when he writes horror thrillers more than I prefer his like detective thrillers. This is a detective thriller, but I loved it. I love Bill Hodges. If you want more in-depth explanation of the story, of my feelings on it, you should watch my vlog, which I'll have linked down below. My TLDR, my gist, is that Stephen King has a way of writing really horrible characters enough that it makes you scream and makes you feel a little nauseous when he's talking from the perspective of the hater. This is no different. There's triggers for everything from like sexual assault to child molestation to abuse to racism. If you are triggered by anything, literally anything, Stephen King just isn't the writer for you. And I'm not to say, that is not me mocking triggers at all. That is literally just saying like he is no holds barred when he writes his characters, and that is something that some people can appreciate in a book because character depth includes terrible people sometimes, and other people want to avoid it, and that's totally fine. And if you're someone who wants to avoid that, don't ever waste your time on anything Stephen King has like ever written ever. I respect his character arcs as they stand. Even I get squeamish at scenes. So be aware that happens in almost all his work. I adore it. I adore this book. I don't adore it for those things. I adore it for the whole of it. The good characters, the bad characters, the plot points, the twists. I don't think there's a writer alive right now that does it the way Stephen King does it. And that's just my 2 cents. Second to last, the book I had to return already to the library because somebody put it on hold, which does not shock me because it is now going to be a Netflix show. That is Bird Box by Josh Malerman. What a ride. I really went into it anticipating I'd love it, but I was also kind of afraid because sometimes I hype books up so much and then I read them and I'm like, damn, I overhyped it, and now I think that's why I don't like it as much. Not the case for Bird Box. I was in it. I read that book in I think 2 days, maybe even less than that, I don't remember. I've seen a lot of people on the fence about it. There's some ambiguity in the horror aspect of it because it's about something is out in the world, and if you see that thing, it drives you insane to the point of violence and then suicide. That's the ultimate. The ambiguity of the thing. Some people love it and some people don't love it, and I loved it. When I was like refreshing through it with my husband, he thought of like, you know, Eldritch Horrors, H.P. Lovecraft fan. Like, it was just cool. You do get a tiny little glimpse into it sort of, but not really. I'm trying not to get spoilery. In any case, it's about a woman that is pregnant and trying to survive in this. And you see the story from her pregnancy and several years after she's become a mother, and she needs to travel to the next place. I can't say much about the plot without giving it away, so we'll stop there. It was a 5-star read for me. I loved it. I shut that book and went, damn. I think we can leave it there. And last but certainly not least, we're going back to the author that isn't for everyone, but he is for me, established as a favorite author, Stephen King, Salem's Lot. I've owned this book for a while, like at least over a year. I tried to read it like a library copy probably 3 years ago, and I got through the first chapter, and I don't know if I just wasn't in the mood. I didn't know what the story was about. I never read a synopsis. I put it down, I returned it, never got back to it. Bought it, thought, you know, this is gonna work really well in October. It worked really well in October. It's a vampire story. It's about a writer who goes back to a town where something bad in his past happened, and he's gonna write a story while in that town because it's got, you know, like old haunts for him. And he got more than he bargained for when a vampire comes to town and chaos ensues. It's a hell of a book. As I said, I read tomes, or I read middle grade this month. I think I read it in 4 days. 4 days. I couldn't put it down. I was thinking about it when I wasn't reading it. It's easily in my top 5 King books at this point in my life. I don't have much more to say than that. It was a great story. That's my October wrap up, guys. I don't know how you feel about the new format of me standing. I felt more comfortable. I hope that it turned out okay, that I didn't move around too much for you and give you motion sickness. Thanks for being here, guys. How did your October go? Mine was pretty successful. I don't think I'm gonna top it in November, but I feel like I say that every month, so I guess we'll find out. Did you read any of these books? What spooky books did you read? If you participated in any of the readathons, let me know below. Do you hate Stephen King? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, maybe you love him, maybe you won't. That's it for me, guys. If you want to like this video, go ahead and hit like right now. Subscribe if you're new here, and I will see you when I see you in the next one, guys. Thank you so much. Bye. As you know, I like to do my wrap-ups in, wow. Tongue-tied. He is at a school. There's some floaties in here.